It's a it's a fantastical story, and it revolves about this like girl who, I don't even know what it's been a while. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some TBR veterans. This is a kind of older idea here on YouTube, but a couple of months ago in my TBR basket, and by a couple of months ago, I mean, I think it was fall of last year, I ended up pulling the TBR Vet prompt out of my basket of reads. And so I went back to a TBR veteran video I made, I don't know, a couple of years ago probably, and realized, I don't really know what's on my shelf that's a TBR veteran or what I would consider TBR veteran anymore. So I went back to that video for help. B, the video was crazy outdated. I don't think anything on that list I either owned or wanted to read anymore. So I decided, let's just go ahead and make a new list so that if this prompt comes up again, then I have something like a pool to choose from, but also it gives me an idea of what's been on my shelves the longest, maybe some things that have been hidden in certain places and I kind of forgot about, that maybe I will put these in the forefront of my brain. So I have got 15 books here to talk to you about. I know everyone has their own opinion of what a TBR vet is. For me personally, it's a book that either I've had on my shelves for long, like I can't pinpoint when I picked it up. It's been there for so long. But for me, it's got to be over a couple of years is when I start to consider it a vet, because I go through my bookshelves so frequently that I really unhaul a lot of things that I don't enjoy. And so at this point, I've got my shelves pretty much to like priority TBR. And so these are just some of the ones that have been there the longest. I don't really remember what these are about. I'm not gonna lie, but let's just dive in. So the first book is one that I've actually talked about a lot recently because I've read something else by this author, and that is the Queen of the Tearling series by Erica Johansson. This is the first one. I own all three. It's a trilogy, and it is a series that this kind of is a stand-in for all of the books in this series, in my opinion. I picked this one up, oh my gosh, I don't even remember how long ago it was, but I was trying to find all three of these books, and I found them pretty close together. The reason I picked this up is it was a fantasy book, and the main character in it, her name is Kelsey. And so that kind of sparked my interest right away because I was like, ooh, we share the same name. But then I've heard good things about this series. I think it's one of the maybe more loved series out there. I might be wrong about that, but I feel like I've heard good things about this. And then, like I said, I read a book by Erica Johansson in December. I read her newest Christmas kind of Nutcracker adaptation, and I really enjoyed her writing style. So it's made me extra excited about this series. It says here on the back, it's a young woman, a kingdom, an evil enemy, and a birthright foretold. And so she is 19, and she has now been, she takes over her role as the queen, and I think it was her uncle or something who was kind of the regent before her, and there's some evil stuff going on. It's fantasy, so I'm not sure what the fantastical elements are, but there's some sort of fantasy elements in it, and she is just trying to keep things together. I'm sure it's way more than that, but like I said, it's a trilogy, so this is just kind of the stand-in for the whole thing, but I've had this a very long time. This has made several moves with me. Actually, the entire trilogy has made several moves with me. The next one is a mystery that I have had on my shelves for quite a while. I'm sure I picked it up at like a half-priced book sale or a library sale or something. And it's called Lady Jane Disappears. And this is by Joanna Davidson Politano. I actually think I have the audiobook of this on Audible. I feel like I got it. It was one of those like included or free or something. But it's a Regency-esque, I think it's Regency. I'm not 100% sure if I'm correct on the time period, but it is that like grand house vibe, but it's a murder mystery, or at least a mystery. This one is kind of a hodgepodge mix, but basically it follows our main character, Aurelie, and her father has recently died, and he's left her everything. So she comes to his house where he already has a family and basically tries to make things work, tries to learn the norms of society, and then her mother ends up going missing. He's also a famous writer, and so he leaves her his pen name and a partially started story. And so it's her maybe finishing the story, but also having this mystery of like what the heck happened to her mom. So I don't know, it's like a mystery story that's set in a, I still want to say it's like Regency, but it's got that like society, maybe it's not quite Regency, maybe it's a little bit more modern than that, but it has those societal norms situation, so there is some historical elements to it. I don't know, it sounds really good, and I've unhauled so many things in my on my shelves over the past however many years, and this one still has never once left because I'm still very interested in it. So murder mystery. Well, I keep saying murder mystery. It's not really a murder mystery, I don't think, but it's a mystery. Historical mystery. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. The next one is one that I got. When did this book come out? This one came out in 2019, and that is The Cold in Her Bones, and this is by, oh no, I do this every time, Peter Neil Van Arsdale, I want to say. It's a relatively short book, but it revolves around, I think, dragons, or something magical. Demons. Sorry, demons, not dragons. This one basically follows our main character, Mila, and she lives in this village where there are demons, and the demons basically infiltrate, that's not what I want to say, possess, words are hard, they possess young girls, and so her entire townspeople are terrified of this, and so she lives on a farm kind of a little bit outside of town, and she's never allowed to go to town, but there's this young girl named Iris who shows up, and she's like, finally, I've got a friend, but then they think that Iris is actually possessed by a demon. And so I think it's her trying to get her friend back, and things of that nature. But it just sounds really good. I think this cover is stunning. I just keep forgetting that I have it and not making time for it. It's less than 300 pages. Like, it's relatively a short story. So I should be able to get to it. I just keep not doing it. So this is also another one that has been I've gone through and thought about unhauling, and it never quite makes it to the unhaul pile. So there's something about this that is still has my attention. The next one is definitely, I think, going to be in a potential BookTube Made Me series, because I remember exactly why I picked this one up, and that is Ray Bear, and this is by Jordan DeFueco. This is the first in a duology, actually. This is the UK cover. Isn't it stunning? But Jesse from Jesse here on BookTube, they talked about this in one of their videos. I don't even know, many years ago. It was like right after I discovered them. And I picked it up because of how much I enjoyed it. And then I've heard a few things since they were the first one who like showed it to me, but then I've heard other booktubers talk about it. It came out in 2020, or at least it came out in 2020, so it was relatively recent, but I just think it sounds really good. So this one follows our main character who, I'm sure I'm going to butcher their name, so I'm going to have to find an audiobook to make sure I do this correctly, because I think it's inspired by certain mythology or cultures, but it basically follows this girl who's only ever longed for family, but she's been isolated and raised by this woman called the Lady, who is very, very distant. But then she comes of age, and the Lady sends her to calls her to the capital, and basically puts her in this competition to be one of the Prince's Council of 11. And so if she's picked, she'll be his council, and they'll be tighter than, like, there's a bond there that's ridiculously tight. But her mother really, really wants her to kill this guy. So there's a lot going on here, but like I said, it's the first in duology. I've heard amazing things about it, and I just keep not reading it, and that's a problem. So one day I'm going to read it. Okay, the next one was actually a gift from my friend, because she got this. It was from Once Upon a Book Club book, and so she got it, and it comes with like little things that you're supposed to like open on certain pages, and they're supposed to correlate with the story itself. But I've never actually picked it up, and I still have all those things hidden somewhere in packages that I have yet to open. Either way, but it's Daughter of Sparta, and this is by Claire M. Andrews. It's one of the James Patterson Presents books, but I feel like it was my friend Lauren who gave this to me, but like it's clearly a Greek-inspired story, And that is why she gave it to me, because she's like, you will enjoy this a lot more. And I think it would be so fun, because like you go through this book, and if you get to a certain page, here, let me see if I can find it. I literally just found it. You go to a page and it says, hey, you've got something to open here. And it's like, I don't know, some of them, I could tell some of them are jewelry. So it could be like the main character's wearing this bangle, and then you pick up a thing and it's got a bangle in it. I don't really know what the gifts are, but I feel like it would be like a fun experience. And that's why I've still held on to this one. Also, it's Greek mythology. Or it's Greek, right? It's mythology inspired, and that is why I still have it. Do I know what it's about? No. It says Sparta forged her into a deadly weapon. Now the gods need her to save the world. It follows 17-year-old Daphne. And she's a warrior. So you've got some stuff going on. Also, it's signed, or it's got a book plate signed by the author. So there's a lot of really cool things about this book. It's just one of the books that's not at like the tippity top of my TBR, so I forget about it. But I'm hoping to get to it, because like I think it would just be so fun. The next one is These Old Shades by Georgette Hare. This is an author. I don't actually know when this book came out. It was originally came out in 1926, so it's been a hot second. But I was told that this is an author that I would enjoy if I like Jane Austen. And so I've got 2 books by this author, and then I decided I should probably read her before I actually get much farther into collecting books by her. So I have yet to get any more. This one specifically follows a guy named the Duke of Avon, who has waited 20 years to get revenge on his arch enemy. And so he ends up kidnapping like the protege or something that's important to this person. And then I think starts to fall for said girl that he kidnapped. I don't really know. It feels very much like the subject matter does not feel like a Jane Austen story, but I think it was written because it was written so long ago. It's got the vibes of that, so I'm very interested to see what her writing style is about, but this was the first book that I picked up by this author. I've also got Annabella, which I don't know what that one's about either, but it's historical fiction, historical romancy stuff, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be really fun to dive into. I just have to do it. This one I haven't owned for very long. I've only owned... Actually, it has been a couple of years. I take it back. It's been on my TBR for as long as it's been published, but I've only physically owned it for a couple of years. And that is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is the first, I think, in a companion series. I know there's a couple others out there. I got this one from a family member who read it and said, you will enjoy, I'm going to gift it to you. And it's a book of the month book. She gets a lot of book of the month books. This one was from June 2018. So it's been a hot second. But I've heard really good things about this. It's a romance. It's a relatively steamy romance. It follows Stella, who is 30 years old, I think, and has a lot of issues in the dating department. She also has Asperger's, and so dating is extra hard for her. So she ends up hiring a escort named Michael, and he kind of teaches her the ways of courting. That was I dated myself there. Dating, so that when she's actually out on the dating market, she will be able to function, I guess, and know what to do. So this is their love story. And then, like I said, there's other books in the series that are companion books, like I think a sister gets a book and things like that. So we'll see if I want to continue, but I've heard really good things about this. I love the steam factor, or the idea of a steam factor, but it's been on my TBR. Actually, it's been on and off my TBR over the however long it came out. 2018, I'm assuming, is when it came out, since that's when 2018, since that's when the book of the month was. But it's been on and off my TBR, but it's been on my TBR for like a few years now. So I'm glad I own a copy, and hopefully I'll read it soon, because I have questions, especially since I've been like really enjoying all of the STEM romances by Ali Hazelwood. I feel like this is in the same vibe as that. Okay, the next one is The Downstairs Girl, and this is by Stacey Lee. This is a historical fiction story that I have had for a couple of years. This one came out in 2019. We follow our main character, Jo Kwan, who is a lady's maid, but she also has an advice columnist called Dear Miss Sweetie. And so I think it takes place in Georgia, Atlanta. Look at me. So she's a lady's maid for it says here, a very cruel daughter of a wealthy man in Atlanta. but she also has this newspaper advice column. And so, of course, people probably think that she is white when she is very clearly not. And so it's that story. I think things come out and she tackles some society issues that are probably more political to tackle. And then I feel like people figure out who she is, or her identity gets leaked, or something similar. I don't know. It just sounds really good, and I've had it since it came out. I'm pretty sure I pre-ordered this book, or I got it relatively soon after it came out, the year it came out. I just remember owning this one relatively soon after it came out, and it just sounds really good. And here we are. The next one is another one that I think I'm going to read in a BookTube Made Me series at some point, and that is The Invention of Sophie Carter, and this is by Samantha Hastings. Desi from Darling Desi is the one who introduced me to this one. Also the Georgette O'Hare. That's the YouTuber that I heard about that one from as well. But this one is again, a kind of mystery story, but it surrounds a season in London. So I think Regency, it's set in 1851, and it's these two twins, identical twins, who want to go to the London season, and only one of them is allowed. So they sneak both of them to the London season and kind of switch back and forth pretending to be this person. And I think they have two different love interests. And it just kind of backfires, clearly. But I don't know, there's something about that sounds really, really interesting. So I want to read this one. And it's a kind of historical, I'm not sure if it's a historical romance, but it's definitely a historical fiction story. And I really need to get back into my historical fiction vibe, because I love historical fiction, but I read a lot of historical romance specifically. And so I need to dive into some more just general fiction stuff. This one is actually a gift from one of you lovely people. Elizabeth gifted this to me, and that is The Other Bennett Sister, and this is by Janice Hadlow. I think you gifted this one to me, if I remember correctly. I read another story that followed Mary Bennett, which was the middle sister of the Bennett sisters from Pride and Prejudice, and really disliked it, and this one had come out close to that time, and a lot of people were like, please read this, and so you were like, here's a better one. Thank you very much. I am terrible at reading things, so I'm so sorry I haven't read this yet, but it sounds so good. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's another story that follows Mary Bennett. This one came out in 2020, and so it's her, it says here, it follows Mary Bennett, like I said, which is the bookish ugly duckling in Pride and Prejudice, as she transforms into a woman with passionate choices of her own. So I love the idea of a Mary Bennett story. I think she is incredibly underrated as a sister from Pride and Prejudice. I know we all love the Lizzie and the Jane stories, and don't get me wrong, I will read all of their stories all the time, but like, Mary barely gets any page time. She is quite literally forgotten. And so I love the idea of all these different authors taking her story, because like, I have a headcanon of who I think she should have ended up with, but that's a different story. But I did not enjoy how the other book that I read that followed Mary Bennett ended. So I'm very interested to see how this one's going to go. I just like the idea of her getting her own story, and she like kind of, you know, she finally deserves it. She's a little bit of an odd duck, but that's because her sisters are so different than her. And I don't know. She's a bookish girly, and we all love bookish girlies. So I have had this one for a couple of years, and I really need to get to it. The next couple are actually historical romances that I bought, God knows when my historical romances, specifically mass market historical romances, fit on one shelf, or half of a shelf at that point. Like, I did not own that many, and then we have two entire shelves, and then I've double stacked, and then there's also some more up here. It's a hot mess. Anyway, you didn't need to know that. The first book is The Wedding Bargain, and this is by Victoria Alexander, who I don't actually own anything else by this author, but this is one of the books that I picked up relatively early on, like I said, in my mass market vibe. I think it's also part of a companion series. So this book follows our main character, Pandora Effington, who is London's most scandalous beauty, it says here, and she intends to marry a hero. She's got all of these kind of like check-marked things, and the one person who actually fulfills this is an earl named Maximilian. And so he can't believe his ears when she comes to him and proposes that they should get married, but he has to agree to a game of her devising, one involving great risk, ingenuity, passion, and determination. So they play a game, or some, I don't really know how this is going to work, but it sounds interesting. I love me a good historical romance set in Regency England. Like I said, I think this is part of a series where we follow a bunch of people from the same family. I don't know, sounds good. I've had it for quite a while. And then another book is Man of My Dreams by Joanna Lindsey, which is one of, I own so many Joanna Lindsey books at this point, but this was one of the first few that I picked up. So this follows our two main characters. One of them is Megan, who has her eyes set on this Duke, I think yeah, Duke, named Ambrose. And she's never met him, but she's like, he's perfect, I must have him. And then you've also got Ambrose, who is basically, he decides to disguise himself as a sable hand to get away from his family and just being a duke and just getting some time to escape, but also to kind of figure out who this woman is a little bit. So you've got some disguise here, and then I think she will fall for him. This is, like I said, one of the first Joanna Lindsey books that I picked up. It's been a couple of years since I bought it. And I love me a good Joanna Lindsey book, but I own so many books that are part of Mallory series, which I really do enjoy, but I like that I have a couple that are not part of that series, and this was one of the ones that I picked up early on. I'm not in love with the cover, but you guys know me, I'm not a huge fan of, like, people. Let me clarify, I'm not a huge fan of faces on covers. I don't know what it is, but I love Joanna Lindsey, and I've had this one for a very long time. I've only got a couple of these left. I think the next two are both books that I got in Fairy Loots as, like, extra books beyond the, like, hardcover that you get. The first one is Twin Crowns, and this one is by two authors, Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber, and it says One Throne, Two Princesses, and that's exactly what it is. It's super pretty as well, but it's one of the books that I actually like. When I got it in the Fairy Loot, I recognized the cover. No, I recognized the title and the authors because I'd seen this kind of swirling around. And I'd seen some people who said, like, if you like these books, you'll like this one. And I can't remember what the other ones were, but they were books that I had enjoyed. This one came out, this one only came out in 2022. I feel like it's been on my shelves for much longer than that. Anyway, it basically follows two sisters. One's a princess and one is not. And so they have a lot of rivalry because there's a sister who's the princess, and then there's a sister who was kind of stolen from her birth from the castle, and so she, I think, is fighting to get her spot back. It's relatively chunky as far as, like, shorter books go. Like, this book is 500 pages, so it's definitely on the chunkier side, but I've heard good things, and I've had it for a while. This cover's super shiny. I do apologize. Another one under the same vein is An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. I've heard good things about this author. I haven't read anything by her, but I've heard good things. And this is I think, very, very loosely based Romeo and Juliet that is inspired by Chinese mythology, it says here, right here on the back. If I remember correctly, the book that was really, really popular by this author was a kind of magical realism book, and the vibes I'm getting from this are also magical realism. But you guys know I loved the other kind of Romeo and Juliet retelling inspired book that I read, the one by Chloe Gong, These Violent Delights. So I'm very interested to see what this one's going to be about. Like, I've heard really good things about this author, but I don't know a whole lot about them. This is, I believe, a YA kind of contemporary, or contemporary with magical elements. So I'm hesitant about that factor, but I've just heard such good things, and it's very interesting to me, and it has to do with archery as well. So I don't know, it just sounds good. So I haven't quite gotten rid of that one yet, and it's still on my list of things to read. And then the very last book is another one that I got, I don't know, so many years ago when I was going through a really big historical. There's a lot of historical fiction on this list, I'm now realizing. But this is another one. I think put this on a TBR and started reading it, but it did not go very well. And that is The Witches of St Petersberg by Imogen Edwards Jones. This is a reimagining, historical reimagining that takes place around the time of Anastasia and Rasputin, specifically Rasputin. It follows these two sisters who come to court, and they are very interested in witchcraft and that kind of, those elements of things. And so I think they team up with Rasputin, or they get involved in, like, his school of thought, or there's something that, like, they're involved with him and his like brainchild. So I don't really know, but it's set in the Romanov era, and I've always been really interested with that era. The story of Anastasia is like one of my favorites. It's like the Disney movie is kind of like my husband and I's movie. So I love anything that revolves around the actual history around that. I've got quite a few retellings of Anastasia or reimaginings of Anastasia on my TBR, and this is just one that takes, I think, a different angle to the Anastasia story because it's set more in the court, the Romanov court, rather than like following her specifically. But sounds good. I'm very interested in it, and it's been on my shelves for so long. When did this come out? That's a great question. It says this one came out in 2019, so it's been on my shelves probably about that long. And that's it. Those are a look at the 15 books that are on my list of books that I would consider kind of on the TBR veteran side of things. I am discovering as I'm doing this video that I just need to read more historical fiction because I have quite a few on here, and I have not read them. So let me know. Let me know if you've read these books that I mentioned in today's video, or if I should bump any of them up on a TBR. I'm always down to bump things up if you guys think I should. So let me know your thoughts, or let me know some of the books that would be on your list of TBR veterans, or books that you have on a TBR, whether it's a physical TBR or just like your mental Goodreads kind of TBR that you've had on for quite a while. I would love to know. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!